Nike just released the Mercurial Vapor 16, and if you want to pick up the Elite version, it's going to run you about $260. But if you're on a budget and you want to spend less than $100, you're instead going to be looking at the Vapor 16 Academy. And this $90 Academy model is exactly what we'll be covering in this video. We're going to go over all the features of this new boot and see how it compares to last year's model. And we'll also talk about other great boots in this price point so you can find the option that's going to be best for you. And of course, at the end of the video, if you're interested in picking up a pair of the Vapor 16s or picking up any of the other boots that we discuss, you can find links to them on sale with discount codes in the description below. All right, now let's get into the video, starting with the design of these boots. So starting right off the bat, from an aesthetic perspective, the Vapor 16 Academy is going to bear a lot of resemblance to last year's Vapor 15 Academy. You're going to get Nike's iconic swoosh logo on top of what is a relatively slick Nike skin upper. Now, once I actually got these boots in my hands and got them on feet, I noticed that the upper actually is going to be a little bit thicker compared to last year's version. Because the upper on the Vapor 15 Academy was actually so thin that at some points it was almost a bit translucent, whereas the upper on the new Vapor 16 Academy is just going to have a little bit more heft to it. And the thickness of this upper does reflect in the weight of the boots as well. In a size 10.5 US, they come in at around 256 grams, making them about 50 grams or so heavier than the premium version. But that being said, the upper isn't bulky by any means, and I actually really like the slick matte coating that you get on the exterior of the boots. Now, the lacing system is where you're going to see some pretty major differences between this model and the more expensive versions on offer from Nike. Because instead of having a one-piece upper held together by a slick, elasticated Flyknit material, you're actually going to have a more open, traditional lacing system with the Academies. Basically, what that means is instead of the boots having one continuous piece of fabric wrapping them all together, you're going to have a standalone tongue here at the top of the ankle. The only weird thing about this lacing system is that the tongue is actually only free past about the first two lace holes here, and then halfway down the tongue, it actually becomes connected to either sides of the upper. So that just means that towards the top of the ankle, you are going to have more adjustability, but as you get closer towards the toe box here, you're not going to have that same stretch. That's probably one change I would have made if I was Nike. I would have had this tongue just be detached throughout both sides of the upper all the way down the length of the boot, just because I think it would have allowed for a little bit more adjustability. And then inside the boot, you're going to get a relatively soft textile liner. And then this gets even softer when you move towards the heel area, and you almost get this really soft suede-like material that wasn't present on last year's version, and I would definitely say that this is an upgrade. Sometimes the heel area can start to feel pretty cheap on more affordable models, but this is definitely an exception. Then if you're able to remove the insole, which if you're like me is actually pretty hard to do because I think Nike have glued this in pretty much all throughout the midfoot, you can reveal that you do have an air zoom unit in the heel of these boots. Now, all that air zoom is basically a compressed pocket of air that's embedded into the sole plate. Nike have used this air zoom technology in their running shoes for several years, but if I'm being honest, ever since they've implemented it into their football boots, while it is pretty cool from a marketing perspective, I guess, I can't really say that I've noticed that much of a difference when wearing the boots. That being said, I guess it's cool that they didn't entirely leave out this feature when going from the Elite version to the Academy model. The only thing I would say is that maybe their design efforts could be better spent in other areas. Then if you turn to the underside of these boots, you see a really cool wave-inspired outsole. Now, aesthetically, this does look very similar to the sole plate that's featured on the premium Elite version. However, the main exception is instead of just having bladed chevron studs that you see part the way throughout this sole plate, you also have the addition of some rounded conical studs. And because this boot features some conical studs, it's actually advertised for use on MG, which stands for multi-ground. So in theory, Nike is suggesting that you can wear these boots on both firm ground natural grass as well as artificial grass. But lucky for you, if you exclusively play on artificial grass, Nike also sells a version of the Vapor 16 Academy with a full AG sole plate. All right, now that we've covered the design, let's get into the fit and feel. Now, I was very impressed with the fit of the Vapor 15 Academies from last year, so I had pretty high expectations when trying on these boots for the first time. And for the most part, I can say that the Vapor 16s didn't disappoint. Now, although you are going to get some adjustability towards the top of the ankle here with this lacing system, the Vapor 16s aren't going to be the widest football boot. But because they are a little bit more open towards the top of the ankle, they might actually be a little bit better for wide feet compared to the Pro and Elite version. The toe box for the new Vapor 16 has a slightly more squared off design that I would say is relatively average width, and it was just able to accommodate my feet. When I actually compare the toe boxes of the Vapor 16 Academy and the Phantom GX2 Pro here, you can see that the Vapors actually do have a little bit more of a squared off design, whereas the Phantoms tend to taper a little bit more aggressively towards the front of the boots. As I mentioned before, I do wish that the tongue here was fully detached because I think it would just make the boots a bit more comfortable, especially towards that toe box area. Now the heel area is going to be really soft. I love the implementation of this material, and I 100% think it's noticeable when you have them on feet. Getting the boots laced up, I didn't notice any pressure points around the heel or ankle, and I had just barely enough room at the front of the boots in my standard size 10.5 US. And regarding sizing, Nikes in general tend to run a little bit slim, especially the Vapor model. So I would say if you're looking to get a really close barefoot feel, I'd probably recommend going true to size. But if you want to have a little bit of extra room at the front of the boots, I'd probably suggest going about a half size up. Certainly, if you find yourself in between sizes, I would go for the larger one. So what were the Vapors like to play in? Now, I'm not gonna lie, these boots really were facing an uphill battle because I had so much fun playing in the Vapor 15 Academy last year, and I wasn't really quite sure if these boots were gonna deliver the same experience. And the thing I found so impressive about the Vapor 15 Academy from last year is that the upper was so thin, almost as thin as the upper that you got on the $260 version. And that's probably the only area where I feel like the new Vapor 16 Academy isn't quite as strong, just because the upper here is a little bit thicker compared to last year's model, and that is something that you notice when you're dribbling the ball and making small touches. But all of that being said, this upper doesn't feel bulky, rigid, or plasticky, which you can sometimes run into on more affordable models, and you're still gonna get quite a lot of sensitivity on your touches. And after running around in these for over an hour, I still didn't get any pressure points or blisters around the heel or at the front of the toe box. And I also was really impressed with the traction I got from the sole plate. I didn't feel like it was too aggressive on artificial grass, so I didn't notice that these chevron studs were biting into the synthetic surface at all, and I also didn't slip on the surface at any point. Now, I would just say if I was only going to be playing on artificial grass, I would probably opt for the version with that AG sole plate, just because I think it's going to be a little bit better suited for the surface. So if you're willing to accept that the upper on this third tier takedown isn't going to be quite as thin or quite as soft as the premium version, I think they're definitely going to be a lot of fun to play in. Next up, let's talk about the value of these boots. So the Vapor 16 Academy is going to retail for $90, and if we're being honest, for a third tier takedown, that's starting to get up there. I remember just a few years ago when you could pick up an Academy model for around 50 to 60 bucks tops. But to be fair, between Nike, Adidas, and Puma, $90 is becoming a pretty common price tag to see on third tier takedowns. And these are still going to be really respectable boots that bring some of the design aesthetic and feel of the premium model. I think the only thing that goes against the value proposition of these boots is going to be the other great models that you can find at this price point. And with that, let's talk about these boots' biggest competitors. So the first and most obvious competitor to the Vapor 16 Academy is going to be the Vapor 15 Academy. Because believe it or not, the Vapor 15 Academy is only a little over a year old. And now that the Vapor 16 has been released, you can find the older version for around 50 to 60 bucks online. And despite the fact that the Vapor 15 is the older of the two models, you're gonna get a more razor thin barefoot feel with the upper on the Vapor 15. The only thing you're not gonna get is this really soft cushioned heel liner that comes on this model. But to be honest, I didn't really notice any issues with the heel on the Vapor 15 either. So if you can find them on sale, I think picking up the Vapor 15 Academies would be a great alternative to this boot. And then next up, another competitor I really wanted to bring up from Nike would be the Premier 3. Now, to be fair, the Nike Premier 3 does retail for around $110, which is going to be 10 to 20 or so more than the retail price of the Vapor 16 Academy. But if I'm being honest, the Premier 3s are just noticeably better. I mean, for just over $100, you're getting a pair of football boots with a full kangaroo leather upper that's extremely soft at the touch. They deliver a more comfortable fit, and I think overall, they're just going to be a better value proposition. So if you're just looking for a really great $100 boot from Nike, the Premier 3 is still going to be one of the boots to beat. And then finally, the last major competitor I had to mention for the Vapor 16 Academy is going to be the F50 League from Adidas. And if I'm being real, the F50 Leagues kind of put a dagger in these boots. Now, I don't really know what happened because around a year or two ago, I would have told you that Nike is the king of making takedown boots. And to be honest, they still make great takedown boots. I mean, the boot I'm holding right now, the Vapor 16 Academy, is a great option. but within the past few months, Adidas has really stepped up their game with their more affordable models. In fact, when I tried on the $90 F50 League a few months ago, I actually had more fun playing in those than I did with the premium F50 Elite. And that's not surprising because the F50 League actually feels like a premium football boot that should retail anywhere from $150 to $200. And while the Vapor 16 Academy is a solid option, it does noticeably feel like a takedown boot. So at least as of today, while I am a fan of the Vapors, I'd say that the best boot at $90 is still going to be the F50 League. So what are my final thoughts on the Vapor 16 Academy? I would first and foremost say, don't let the comparisons I made weigh you down. If you want the Mercurial Vapor look and feel in a package that comes under that $100 price point, the Academies are still going to be the way to go. Just know that there are going to be some great alternatives to check out around this price point, including last year's model, which was really impressive. And guys, that is going to do it for this video. And please let me know in the comments below if you've gotten the chance to try on these boots and what you think of them. Also, if you want to enter my 20,000 subscriber giveaway for a new pair of football boots, it's really simple. All you got to do is be subscribed to the channel and fill out the form in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like if you've enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.